Well, good afternoon. This is, well, maybe it is. This is infrastructure security for Comp 422 and Comp 620. Okay. Infrastructure security is the topic. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the exam, and then we'll talk about backups. So we'll start with infrastructure security. And I went out to Wikipedia. This is what Wikipedia tells us infrastructure security is. As you can see, it's security provided to protect infrastructure, especially, and then almost everything you can think of, airports, railways, bridges, everything, media, electricity, dams, all the things you might imagine out there that is part of infrastructure. And it's a very large group. So it brings us to our first question. Well, if it's so important, how much do companies spend on it? So let's try that one. Where are the polls? There we go. And yes. Yeah. 100%. Oh, yes, skip E. Hit E, not E. It's not E.
Tell us if it's not A, B, or C, or D.
It's not E.
No.
And that. And all right. Well, okay. Sorry for the delay. Yes, the 8% was a very popular number. Unfortunately, the answer is 0.5%. Yes. Okay, so it's a small percentage, which gets back to the quote: if you spend more on coffee than IT security, then you deserve to be hacked. What's more, or you'll be hacked, you deserve to be hacked. Okay. There's lots of things out there that's going to get you. Disasters of intentional or natural. Don't overlook natural disasters. They occur quite frequently. And you're gonna have, of course, we're all used to hurricanes and stuff like that. Earthquakes don't happen very much here in North Carolina, but they do happen occasionally, and they do happen much more in other parts of the country and the world. Power lines, trees falling on power lines, and squirrels. You think, what, squirrels? Yes, squirrels may commit a kamikaze attack on your power system. They'll only do it once per squirrel, but it can take out your power system. They can also gnaw through wires. Okay, so those are natural. And then there's intentional. Every now and again, angry people may attack your organization. Sometimes you have to ask, what did I do to them? That doesn't really matter. They're mad at something and they might feel like it's their need to attack you. Attacks can come from all sorts of organizations or people. It can be an individual. It can be a single person who's just upset about something. They want to make a point. They may want to disrupt your operation. They may be an unhappy customer. They want to promote a political agenda or extortion. They may want to threaten you and get some money out of it. Then there are terrorist groups. Some sad to say the world is full of, and these organizations, they want to might note that they can do this with a limited budget. It would take a lot of equipment and a lot of money and time and people to go bomb all sorts of places all over the country. But if you know what you're doing, you might be able to do a cyber attack that has an equivalent effect. And then there are other countries that might feel the need to attack infrastructure, which might include your organization. Nowadays, everybody's connected to everything. Well, almost everybody's connected to the utilities. Even Google is trying to have their own power. They are connected to the power grid. Some services, some infrastructure is relatively isolated. If you imagine a small town in the middle of nowhere, they've got their own water service and sewer system, and that's not really connected to everybody, probably. So it's relatively isolated, hard to take them out, whereas other things are much more connected. If the power grid is connected all over the place. A couple of decades ago, a tree fell on a power line in Ohio, took out the power in the whole Northeast United States. It wasn't that the power all went through that wire, but that caused a failure in that local power company. It tended to ground out, so a lot of power. As it lost power, other systems automatically switched and said, oh, we'll provide power to the failing system, as if that makes sense because they're designed in case something starts to fail in one location, they'll provide power from other places. Well, as they did so, they started to overwhelm, and then they would drop out. They would become overwhelmed, and the fuses would blow, and they'd stop, and it just cascaded across the Northeast. For hours and hours, power was out from several states. They've hopefully fixed that. They've said they fixed it. And then, of course, the phone system and the network is all networked together, as it should be. So internet-connected utilities would appear to be much more vulnerable to attack. Let's talk about some of them in particular. Electricity. We use a lot of electricity. Sure, I have my laptop and it will run on batteries for an hour or two, but that's it. Then you need to recharge it. Same thing with your phone. Go into the house and turn on the lights. That's nice. And I turn on have the heat. That's really nice to have the electricity to do that. It's a little chilly today, and if without electricity, it would be very cold. So you want to make sure all these things are working. The federal government of the US has stated before that, yeah, we are vulnerable to attack on our power system, that could happen. They are, of course, working very hard to protect it, but they look at it and say, yes, it is an area of vulnerability. Not that the bad guys don't know that already. So attack against infrastructure, any one of them you can think of, the long list ahead of time, airplanes, power, water, sewage, all these could cause quite a bit of disruption. And then social engineering. Not only do you have to break it, but if you make people think it's broken, you can cause almost the same amount of power of disruption. And of course, as we know from the stuff we talked about, you can leave software in the system. You can put malware into a system that will later, at some later date, do something or near the things. I want to talk a little bit about fragility. Last summer, I was driving down the freeway, and NPR had an interview with Jessica Rosenworcel, and she's the chairwoman of the FCC, the Communications Commission. And she said some very interesting things about the fragility of the infrastructure in the United States. Unfortunately, I was driving down the freeway at the time and couldn't take very good notes and came back. This was shortly before the CrowdStrike failure. CrowdStrike, back middle of July, CrowdStrike, which is a company that almost nobody knew about, and CrowdStrike had a failure, did an update, and it brought down 8.5 million computers worldwide. Well, that wasn't too bad, but it wasn't, my desktop or your laptop. No, it was all sorts of infrastructure systems, airlines, 911, healthcare, hospitals, all sorts of agencies were impacted. And it caused a lot of trouble. And it was software that nobody even knew was there. And yet it caused a lot of problems. Here's a question for you. Who is CrowdStrike anyway?
Okay.
Oh, okay. That looks like some more people. Okay, nobody thought it did databases, which is good because it doesn't do databases. The actual answer is D, cybersecurity. Yes, CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity. So interesting to note that these companies' cybersecurity system took them down for hours, for nearly a day. Why? CrowdStrike was caused by a faulty update. There was an error in the code that they provided for an update. They came out with an update. Lots of companies installed that update and it didn't work. It caused their computers to crash. The blue screen of death on Microsoft. It was an error. It wasn't a cyber attack. Although, even though it was an error, I'm sure the bad guys took notice. They looked at that and said, wow, just this simple little error took down all sorts of infrastructure for quite a period of time. Wish they had done that. Now, the threat could have been reduced had the companies before just putting it on their production systems, tried it on a test system. Some companies put things up on the IT system, the people who run their IT operation, put it on their system, see if it works for a while, and then if it does. Of course, some of these things were big, like the airlines have huge systems. The IT doesn't, sort of part of it may not even, IT people may not even use the software that they're protecting. Also, if you don't put updates out there right away, if it's a security update, then you may make your system vulnerable to attacks, a zero-day attack. A zero-day attack is when it comes out that's not been seen before, so your antivirus and your malware protection will not have seen it before. And so if you don't put some protection out there, it may be able to get through that. That's why, of course, you want to put updates on as soon as you can, but you have to also balance that with the worry that they may not work. So our infrastructure is becoming fragile in that there are all these interdependent connected pieces. If one of them breaks, everything goes down. Also, the pieces are becoming bigger. Companies are becoming larger, and there are fewer of them. If you are in need of these services, there are fewer companies from which you can get these services. And when one of these large companies break, a lot of things are impacted. A statement I saw from the ACM is that future incidents are, unfortunately, almost a certainty. There are fewer and fewer service providers out there than we had before. Companies are getting bigger and there's fewer of them. We talked about cloud services just a couple of weeks ago. It's interesting to note that the top 3 cloud service providers account for 66% of all the services provided in the United States. That doesn't account for Alibaba. The first company are Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. You can see in the chart they're getting bigger and bigger. Alibaba is the 4th one. Alibaba is the largest cloud provider in Asia. They're very big, huge in Asia, not just clouds, but they also run what's the equivalent of Amazon in China. Not Temu. Now, this is This is Alibaba. Temu sells this. Alibaba doesn't sell much in the United States, but they are very big in Asia. So they sell a lot. So they're a huge company. Not only do they do cloud services, but they do online retail and other things. They're a monster. Not to say that Amazon, Microsoft, and Google are not. When you look at the online retailers, it's even a greater imbalance. You notice that Amazon, you should not be surprised that Amazon is the largest online retailer in the US. Alibaba doesn't appear here because they don't sell in the US. Amazon is larger than the next 9 companies combined. So they're huge. I mean, and it's interesting to look at this list. I expected Walmart and Amazon to be way up there at the top. I didn't know that eBay made that much money. Just thought they were sort of a little company that sold things online. Like Kroger's, I kind of thought they'd be out there. Kroger has many different brand names. Here in Greensboro, it's Harris Teeter is a Kroger's company, and there are many other names. Carvana kind of surprised me too. But you can see if Amazon breaks, well, a lot of people aren't going to get their Christmas presents. There's not as much competition as there has been. Companies are getting bigger, and there are fewer of them. So there's not as much competition. When you go out to buy these resources, you need to buy it from the big companies. Oh, backing up for a minute here. Talk about Google. Right now, there are several antitrust cases against Google, at least 3 big ones that are threatening to break Google into pieces. One of them claims that Google's advertising intermediate. We talked about that there are companies that have websites that want to display ads, companies that want to advertise, and in the middle we have advertising agents. Google is the largest of those advertising agents, and they take a good deal of money out of everything that's sold. And the Department of Justice is starting to look at that. So there are a few of them, you have to kind of deal with them. And monopolies may not care. They may not care about the level of service. Whereas if you had more competition, if you don't give good service, they'll go to the other person, other company. Well, monopolies, they don't have to worry about that because there isn't one. So when you maintain security of your system, you have to not only maintain security of your system, but of all the other systems that which you depend upon. And there may be many of them. Cyber criminals are going to seek out vulnerabilities in the critical infrastructure. That will impact your company. Cyber warfare. And cyber warfare is when 2 countries or nation states try to attack the computers of the other nation state. In many countries, some countries, I'd like to say probably many countries, have made cyber warfare an integral part of their warfare system. It's cheap. The US buys bombers at almost $1 billion in aircraft. $1 billion for the computers will get you an awful lot of laptops, and with a properly trained group of people, you can be much more effective. Countries, of course, have defense and offense. The National Security Agency in the United States has 2 roles. They are both defensive and offensive. They try to protect us and know what other people are doing. There are defensive goals, and they want to prevent cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, as we hope. Reduce the vulnerability, minimize the damage and recovery should there be an attack, and there probably will be, and minimize the impact of misinformation campaigns. I'm kind of surprised that the last election wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought we'd see a lot more deep fakes. That's not to say I'm disappointed, but okay, but there are different types of threats: espionage, sabotage, propaganda, and economic disruption. Let's talk about those. Espionage, spies. Well, looking at spies are not altogether bad. Spying, by the way, is illegal if somebody catches you in their country spying. But if you're in your country and you're looking at them, it's not considered inappropriate for one nation to spy against the other. Oh, they'll complain a lot about it. But if you have a wonderful weapon, it's of little use if the other side doesn't know you have the wonderful weapon. Yes, question here.
Fine. So,
Oh, they spy all the time. And the other allies spy on us. Yes. I was always amazed when they talk about election interference. They kept saying countries that these might do it. They can mention countries that, in the general, the politicians don't seem to like. They never mention, well, what do friendly countries do? Pick on Canada. Like Canada might have had an interest who got elected. Might they not have done something? I'm not blaming the Canadians at all, but they might have. So might have other friendly countries. And it's not an act of many countries are probably involved, and they're out there looking at secrets and civilian secrets. They want to know what neat technology do we have. A couple of years ago, Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA was doing all sorts of things. They had the Patriot Act, which said you can look at things, and the NSA was recording who was calling people in the United States from other countries that they suspected they were terrorists. In other words, if you got a call from some other country, then the NSA was keeping track of the fact that somebody else in another country called you. They did not, at least they said, they did not record the conversation. They just kept track of who was receiving the calls and who was making the calls. And another cyber back about 7 years, no, what is it, almost 9 years ago, OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, had a lot of records stolen, 21.5 million records of personal information. That's a lot. And they're not sure who did it, but they suspect it was China. Sabotage. Sabotage is going out there and trying to break things. That be disabling your infrastructure, disabling networks and electricity, power, and water, and all the infrastructure we talked about. And so they not only, of course, civilians, but also military infrastructure. And then there's propaganda. You are trying to convince the other side about something. Frequently, they will make false, deep fake images about your leaders saying, give up. There was one where the president of Ukraine was seen making an announcement telling the citizens of Ukraine to surrender, just give up. Well, it wasn't true. It wasn't Zelensky. He didn't do it. But you see a lot of that. And then there's economic disruption. You want to just slow down the economic ability of a country so they cannot support the country. All sorts of ways you can do that. Of course, as you might imagine, injuring the infrastructure keeps the companies from functioning. We saw in the pandemic how fragile the infrastructure was, and something goes wrong, and all of a sudden supply chains are all bogged up and nothing's working. Here's a question for you. Let's see what people think the answer to this one is. Okay, how are we doing online? Hey, whoa, whoa. Wait, there's only a few of them. Let's wait for some more people online to throw in their opinions. Okay, let's take a look at this. B was very popular. I don't know what the answer is. I just thought I'd ask. I'm not sure. Sabotage could be very damaging. Most people said sabotage. There are a couple, at least one or two votes in every other area. I would think economic disruption myself might, depends, of course, how sabotage. Well, what did they do? If you blew up a major organization, that would be disruptive. If you blew up some infrastructure, that could be rude. Propaganda, that could be bad. Economic disruption, disruption, yeah, I could say it. Economic disruption could be very serious, and it might cause lots of problems.
Great question.
Yes. Okay, there have been assortment of cyber attacks. Titan Rain way back, that was, almost 20 years ago, that they had a lot of them going in. It was thought to be attack from maybe China, maybe somebody. They went out there and attacked a lot of them. Who did it? They thought it might be China, first state sponsored. Okay. China denies it. Of course, no country ever says, oh yeah, we did it. They never say we did it, but even if they did. It's interesting, cyber attacks on Estonia about, that was 17 years ago. Estonia got upset. Estonia was part of the Soviet Union. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania were all part of the Soviet Union. They split off as separate countries as they used to be. When the Soviet Union dissolved, there are lots of Russian people in these countries because, of course, they were part of the Soviet Union. And when Estonia started to relocate, imagine here in the United States, people moving around Confederate statues. It was that kind of anger. And they did it there. And so the Russians were upset with the Estonians. And so they started to attack. They started to target Estonian government, Estonian banks, military. Estonia had a very online government system, much more so than the United States has. You do many more things online than you could in the United States. But when they got hit, they got hit. And so there's a lot of denial of service attacks. They've recovered, and now in the capital of Estonia is the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. So that's an organization devoted to providing European NATO cyber defense. And it was believed that Russians did it. Several ethnic Russian Estonian nationals claimed it, and some of them were arrested and convicted for that. A real war. Way back, what was that? 16 years ago, the Russians and the small country of Georgia had a battle. It was a real fighting war with shootings and guns and tanks. Started on the 7th, but before that, it looks like about 2 weeks before that, the Russians started attacking the Georgian computers. So before that is, of course, they wanted to disrupt the Georgian infrastructure. So when they made a attack with soldiers on the ground, wouldn't be able to respond as well. The Georgian president's website was disabled. They started blowing up pipelines, and denial of service attacks, and all sorts of problems out there. Of course, Russian servers. And the result was that the government and civilians were attacked in an effort to diminish the ability of the Georgians to repel the Russian invaders. The Georgians did go back and attack at least one Moscow newspaper. Yes.
They also did it with Ukraine.
Oh, well, yes. Ukraine. I left Ukraine out of this. This is historical. But yes, All sorts of things are going on in Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine, they are still fighting in every tribe. They're still fighting. Cyber warfare is still shooting and killing everybody. So yes, I didn't. That one's going on. I just thought I'd talk about Georgia because it's more historical, and we can do that without having to bring up things that are going on. So, neighboring countries offered, neighboring countries offered to help Georgia and host their websites. And the stopgeorgia.ru being the country code for Russia, got attacked by denial of service. Of course, anywhere around the world. Here's a silly question for you, which has no real purpose at all, but this country, Georgia, who are they anyway? Yes, none of the above, all of the above. Okay, oops. All right, two B's and a C, two B's and an A. Okay. A little bit more for B than A. Pretty close though, but about 2/3 for one and 1/3 for the other. It's about what we saw in the class. Yes, and you are correct. Georgia, the state, as far as territory, is about twice as big as Georgia, the country, and has about 2.5 million times as many people. These are small countries over there, but they are lots of small countries. If you look at the map of Europe and compare it to the map of the United States, it's about the same, except over there, they're different countries. Over here, it's different states. Quite a bit, yes, about twice as large as the country. And 2.5 times as many people. Quite a bit larger. So we don't want to attack the state of Georgia, thank you. Okay. So, summary about infrastructure. So there's lots of infrastructure about that. Everything is interconnected. Everything depends on other pieces. And it's important that you understand that if the other pieces get damaged, what impact will that have on your system? And we probably don't have sufficient safeguards. All right. Stand by. We're not nearly done. We want to let's talk about the exam. Okay. All right. We have graded the exam. Everybody should have received an email from me concerning your grade in the exam. I emailed everyone yesterday. If you didn't look, if you didn't see it, if you didn't get your email, oops, please check. If you didn't get anything, let me know and I'll send you a good. Okay, it went pretty well. Exam 3, look at all those A's. Look at all, lots of A's and some B's and a couple of other grades here and there. But in general, the median grade was 89, which is in the A. So a little more than half the students got an A. You can see from here. Okay, exam 3, when merged with the other 2 exams and the average of all your assignments, throwing out the lowest. When I sent the email, the average, the grade it has there, I've already calculated it by throwing out the lowest assignment. I didn't throw out the lowest exam, but of the 7 assignments we had, I threw out the lowest and then averaged the other 6. And these are the grades we got from that. The median for this is 84.8, which is, oh, well, just about between B plus A, right around there. Still a lot of A's, whole bunch of A's there. What was that? 41 A's, I think there were. And you can see how the grades go. Still, the F's, most of the F's are people who've given up. They gave up sometime several months ago, and they just did not withdraw from the class. Okay. Here's the grading scale in case you forgot. It was included that in the email. You can see pretty generous grades for A's. And if you are a graduate student, you can get a C. If you get below a C, you get an F. There are no C minuses or D's in the graduate program. All right, a couple comments about the exam. The old man's going to grumble a bit here. A lot of students jump to AI first and then thought later. People went to AI systems. I could tell the answers from AI systems. It was obvious from AI systems. And some of the AI systems were wrong. If you sat back and thought for a minute, you probably know the answer to these questions better than ChatGPT or the other AI systems. Particularly, question 1 would ask you, how do you detect malware on a phone app? We had an assignment on that. What did you do on the assignment? You just went out and you checked Android manifest.xml and looked for permissions. If you had said, check the permissions, that would have gotten you full credit. But people danced around and told me all about what things they have. Yes, you have.
I've got most of the credit, I can get more credit.
Send me an email and we'll look at it. Okay. To be honest, I didn't grade that question. I'll blame it on my TA, although my TAs do a very good job and they were consistent. One thing you can say is I happen to have the rubrics that they used, and we have a whole list of possible mistakes students might have made and how many points we take off for each one. Sometimes people will just say something very short and they leave off other obvious things. Yeah, okay, probably just saying permissions was insufficient, but if you didn't just start with that, you could have, people left off checking permissions. If you didn't say checking permissions, that was definitely going to lose some points because that's what we did on the assignment. People forgot about the assignment. I don't know if I didn't grade this one, but very few of the ones I looked at ever mentioned, oh, check Android manifest.xml. So it was disappointing. The dark web. More people lost points on this question than any of the other questions. This question asked if somebody's in their dorm room looking at an arms dealer on the dark web, will the university take action against them? Well, okay, if they're on the dark web, they're using the Tor browser because the Tor uses the Onion routing system. And so if they access the dark web, all their traffic using the Onion routing system is going to be encrypted, including the destination. Remember, there's the packets are encrypted and then encrypted for the next router, and then encrypted for the next router. So everything is well encrypted. The university will not know that student is looking at a arms dealer. Yes, we have a question.
Got like 7 points off. So like I said that
You probably got a yes. Okay, if you think actually, if anybody on any of the questions thinks they should have gotten it right, I'll blame it on the TAs, although it's not really the TAs. I graded a whole bunch of them myself. But if you think you got it right, then let me know. Send me an email, talk to me, and I'll take a look at it. Promise not to take more points off, even if you might deserve it. So, basic answer is, university is not going to know. The big purpose of the dark web was to keep things anonymous. You don't know who you're talking to. They don't know who's talking to them. And so the university in particular is not going to know anything in the middle. They can't check to see if you're going to sites because there are about 1,000 different Tor relays. And even if you go to a Tor relay, they don't know if you're going to weapons or maybe something safe like alcohol, tobacco, or porn or something. Those are safe. Okay. So network flooding. Most people got this. Most people got the denial of service question correct. This was for the master's students and the 422 students. Many of the students sent packets to overwhelm a web server, and they fired up many threads. Some, 100 threads, some they just typed lots of nines and started that many threads. Well, that will sort of work, but as an old computer scientist, let me point out that your CPU is much, much faster than the network. Probably one or maybe two threads at most can saturate your network. You can make requests to send packets over the network much faster than the network can send them. One thread will do the job. If you have 10,000 threads, it's just going to get in the way. It's going to cause a mess. You're not going to get any more out the network than you will with two threads. Because, yes, so almost very few people mention anything about that. Okay, so that was common. Got to think about these things. Age verification. There are all sorts of ways people thought to do this one. There were many people relied on some magical government database that they were going to, check with the government database. Oh, and which government database are you going to check? Now, one person was particularly said, well, they're going to check with voter registration because, in fact, voter registration does have your age. I looked at it. I copied the voter registration for the Guilford County, which is public information because you want to look at it, and you can go out there and find out people's age. But I happen to know, having worked the polls, that a lot of people are not registered to vote. Talk about that later. But yes. So, and then people said, we're going to send minimal information. We try to keep things from being compromised. We'll send only minimal information to this. Was it only your birthday? Well, how are we going to determine who this person is? It's not going to work. And the last sentence of the question was, if you recommend using a third-party system, you must explain how the third-party system will function, protect the information. A lot of people forgot that. All right. Now, what everybody cares about, the final exam. I sent everyone an email outlining all their grades, summarizing their grades. And in the bottom of that email, it said whether you are or are not exempt from the final. Now, I exempt people when it appears to be statistically unlikely that the final exam will change the grade. Some people are stuck right in the middle of a grading range. They have to get like 101 on the final to move up, and that's not going to happen out of 100 maximum. They have to get like 26 to go down. Well, it's not likely if somebody's been getting 50 points more than that, they're going to get a 26. So it's just really unlikely that the final exam is going to change the grade. I remember years ago when the provost told me everybody has to take a final. You can't do anything about that. When I had a student who had to get 25 in the final in order to keep his A. He had gotten almost everything right. And so when the final came, 4-page final, he did the first page and turned it in. Didn't even look, didn't even touch the other pages. And he got his 25 points or better on the first page and made it easy for me to grade. Why should he bother anymore? Yes, so why should you bother with the final if it's not going to change your grade? Why should I and the TAs bother grading the thing? So now, if you are exempt, you may take the final if you want. So, of course, if you have an A and you're exempt and you take the final, what kind of an idiot are you? I think I'm going to take points just off for that purpose. But no, if you got anything less than an A and you were exempt, because I thought it was a long way before you can still try. Now, to be honest, if you really screw it up and you go down, but don't worry, you can try. If you don't turn in the final, if you try it and you get to the end, you think, this isn't any good, press the cancel button at the bottom. Do not submit the exam. Or if you really want to, cancel it and send me an email saying you are not doing it. I did it during the exam period. I'll accept that as throwing out. Yes. When we had paper tests, I just said, if you don't like it, just rip it up, walk out. So, yes, you may take the final if you're exempt. Experience shows that not very many people do, but you are welcome to take the final if you like, if you want to. Some people are close to the next grade. I did not let them be exempt. I am requiring them to try. Some people are just a fraction of a point away from getting the new grade. They have to do a certain score on the final that they've got before, that some of their exams have been better than that. You can do it. I really think you should try. Don't give up with don't accept mediocrity. Do the best you can. Okay, any questions about the exam, the final? Final, of course, is Monday, week from today. Same format as before. Starts at 6 a.m. if Blackboard will be open at 6 a.m. and goes till midnight. So, okay, everybody okay with that? And again, if anytime you think I was cruel and mean and took points off that you didn't deserve to lose, do submit. And you should be able to see the feedback on Blackboard. Anybody?
I'll talk to you.
Okay, you see the feedback. Good, because somebody's being told they couldn't see the feedback. So I'll trust if you can see the feedback, it's available. There's a whole lot of buttons in Blackboard, and you have to set a whole bunch of them just right so the students can see the feedback. All right, then that's enough of that. Stay tuned, though. We are not done yet. Ready? Kind of like this. What does a computer hard disk and a gerbil have in common? Their average lifespan is about 3 to 5 years. Okay, let's talk about protecting your data from all sorts of possible problems. First of all, the disks will break. Always break. Some of them, sometimes you get one that lasts for an exceptionally long time. Sometimes you get one that lasts for an exceptionally short period of time. But they will all break. It's a matter of when, not if. All sorts of things can cause data loss. User error, which turns out to be one of the biggest ones. User error, it's the oops faster. You press that button and you go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. There's also the lost thumb drive or lost CD, forget your passwords, things that you do that cause your data to get lost. Of course, then there's disk failures, data corruption. That would be the operating system lost some pointers and now it can't recover the disks. Operating system failures, power failures. When you run your program and you write to a disk, the computer does not immediately write every little sentence you write out to this. It groups it up into a buffer and then writes those buffers out to the disk when you fill a buffer or a couple. It runs much more efficiently if it does that. But if you drop the power immediately, it may not be able to write that last buffer out. So you might lose data there. Natural disasters. Yes, if you have a fire or a flood, that can take out your computer. Malware, of course, and then theft of the whole equipment. Your laptop can easily be stolen. Here's a chart I got of the causes. You'll see that here's hardware failure, a big chunk of them, that thing's broken. And then user error. User did something. This is software corruption is 14%. Computer viruses, that's somebody else getting you. So here, 7% of the data loss is caused maliciously. The rest of it was sort of a natural cause, if you want to say a human error. And then 3% of it was disasters, fires and the like. So that shows you that it's much more likely that you will destroy your own data than somebody else will do it for you. So you have to protect against destroying your own data. Okay, I didn't get these things out on line to be able to put them in the holes. Things got complicated. I was running around with the Red Cross this afternoon. My first Red Cross disaster. Where do you store it? I'll tell you, you really should store it on the hard drive. First of all, it's so much faster. Thumb drives get lost. External hard drives are okay, but they get lost too. The cloud is also good. Cloud, you can store things to the cloud, and the cloud's backed up. So I would say A and D are good answers. If you're doing it, B, change your processes. And C, same thing with C. When was the last time you backed up the data on your computer? Now, you can get automated systems that back it up every night. That's what I have, so I can say within a day. But if you haven't backed it up of never or a month ago, you could be in big trouble if you're computer decides to fail and you can't start it again, you've lost your data. How much data can you afford to lose? Have you ever lost it? Oh yeah, I've lost data plenty of times, even though I think I'm the backup king. I have backups here, I have backups there. I've got backup. When I worked here in the university, when I had an office here in the university, now I'm just homeless, all right, officeless faculty member, but I had a backup. I back up every night to a thumb drive. I take the thumb drive home, copy it to my home computer, and then we get copied to the cloud. And so I had it on the thumb drive. I had it on 2 disk drives, a cloud, a thumb drive, many copies. So if something happens, and things do happen, you can recover. So you have to think about it. How much can you afford to lose? What is the value of your data? Well, for a lot of companies, the data is it. Their corporate secrets, the source code to their product, that's it. If they lose that, it's over. You're lost. You've lost everything. So it's important that you don't lose this information. So how often you have to think about how much data can you lose? When you're typing along and you're typing this big paper, essay, theme, or whatever, and you're typing for an hour, do you want to lose that? You better press the save button. Now, some systems, of course, are very concerned about how often they lose the data. Others, not as important. So you have to think about what is the cost of losing your data versus what is the cost of backing it up? And what is the probability that a failure will occur over a given period of time? You can use that information to kind of calculate how often you ought to back up your data. It generally is not very expensive to back up your data. It's generally even if it's your time, even if you spent an hour writing that stuff and you lost it, you're writing a program and now it's vaporized. It's gone. You'll have to write it again. And that's a bunch of time and frustration. Generally, for a computer, if you just press the save button, it takes you about a second or two, that would save you. Again, when you're working on something, save it to disk every so often. Don't let it go for a long time. I will not going to name anybody, but somebody to whom I'm married tends to, save it maybe once a week. And yes, doesn't press the save button very often. If the computer happens to go down, she loses things. Remember, it just takes a click. Okay. Some systems are very concerned about losing data. I've worked with systems where they had database systems, and every time a database record was changed, they copied the old database record and the new database record up to an audit trail. And the audit trail kept all these changes. And so if there was a failure, actually, this is a long time ago, and they put the audit trail on a tape. So even if the disk self-destructed, that tape would be there, and they could recreate the database. And maybe there are other, nowadays you do a remote backup. They would have systems. The companies that make a fortune running the lotteries have a lottery system, and they have backups, multiple servers, distant servers. So if the server in one city gets wiped out, they have another server in another city that has the information, so nothing's lost. Because it gets to the end and they draw the balls, and you look at your ticket and you say, I've won. And if they lose their data, they say, well, I'm not sure you won. Somebody's going to be upset. I can promise you that. Now, there are also things you can do to harden your systems from losing data. RAID, redundant arrays of independent disks, or redundant arrays of inexpensive disks. That's a series of disks that operate together to help provide
Dr. Williams,
performance and much better fault tolerance.
I was wondering if you're sharing the screen.
Excuse me?
Are you sharing the screen?
I thought I was. Am I not?
I don't see anything.
Hang on. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was. 3 different sets of slides. I missed the last one. Okay, yes.
I see it now.
Yeah, you can see them. I apologize for that. You missed a bunch of pretty slides. Oh, well. Yes, I remember the slides are on Blackboard. I put these on Blackboard. Okay, there are different RAID systems. They have numbers from 0 to 7, I believe now. And sometimes there's additions. 0 doesn't buy you anything for better performance. Oh, excuse me, it's for performance only. It doesn't provide you anything for better reliability. A RAID 1 is a really simple concept. You have 2 disks. And every time you write to one disk, it writes the second disk. If one of the disks breaks, everything is backed up in the other disk. It's very simple. RAID 5 requires multiple disks. It's usually if you have like 3 or 4 disks, you put an extra disk out there and it writes checksum or exclusive OR of all the disks on that last disk. And so if any one of the disks break, then you can recover it by taking the remaining disk, exclusive ORing together, and you get the result. It's kind of slick. And then RAID 6 survives the failure of 2 disks. So if you have like 4 disks of data, 2 disks of backups, and any one of the 2 disks, any 2 of the disks break, you can still get your stuff back. And there are some systems that are very concerned about keeping the systems running forever and ever. Of course, RAID protects you against disk failures, only disk failures. I had a RAID system and the RAID controller broke. That didn't do any good because the files information is spread across the disks. And so if you have 3/4 of the disks, you don't have anything. And of course, remember, user error is big. If you delete a file on a RAID system, it'll delete it very nicely off all the disks. Now, backups. How do we do a backup? There's several ways to do backups. A common backup scheme is to do incremental backups, maybe every day or every day, and then on a quarterly basis or more often on a semester basis, whatever, do a full backup. That's the kind of system I've been doing. Again, I do backups every day, incremental backups, anything, incremental backup, only backups, new files or anything that's been changed. Turns out not to be a lot of space, unless you make a lot of new files every day. And then once a semester, at the end of the semester, I back up everything, the whole thing. Now, what media do you use? All sorts of ways to do this. When you think about it, you want cost. Cost is always a concern. Speed, some devices are significantly faster. Reliability, you want your backups to be reliable. You don't want your backup system to easily break. That's no good. Volume, how big, how much space you're going to, and then lifespan. How long will that last? Several backup devices you have. There are CDs, you can read, write CDs, read, write, or you don't need to be able to write once, read many times devices, DVDs. You can see the size. And there's also the double-sided DVD, Blu-ray ones that are bigger. USB sticks, they're up to terabytes these days. They vary in price. Remote servers, backup cloud systems. There are cloud systems out there. You can buy cloud backup right now. All sorts of companies, they'll sell you backup systems. You load their software onto your computer, and at a given time of the day, it activates and backs up. 6:30 every afternoon, every evening, my system starts to back itself up to the cloud. If my computer is turned off at 6:30, it waits, I turn it back on, then it backs it up. Some people back up to tapes. I personally recommend you never ever use tapes for anything. They are slow and they break. Don't use tapes. Now, when you figure out where you're going to put your backups, where are you going to store those backups? If you just back everything up to thumb drives or other media, and you put that media right next to your computer, that can be a problem. Because if you have a fire, and fires do destroy computers, it'll burn up your backups. That's of course, you don't want it to be very difficult to recover your backups should you need to. Oh, long ago and far away, back in the days of mainframes, and I was help maintaining the system, we did an incremental backup every night at 3 in the morning. and we'd write out to these, in case we use tapes. And then on Fridays, we do a full backup. And then we send previous week's tapes to the local bank. We go down to the bank, into the vault, put a box of tapes, get the old box of tapes, and rotate them through. So we had the recent backups in the computer room. Last week's backups were down at the bank. And so if the whole room got destroyed, then we could always go down to the bank and recover. It's also important for your own backups. This really happened. There was a graduate student, almost finished with his thesis, putting it on his computer. That was several years ago. He was backing things up to floppies. He always backed up his work every day to floppy disk. He stored the floppy disk in a box right next to his computer. Somebody broke in and stole his computer and stole his floppy disks. So his thesis was gone. So don't keep all your only copy with your computer. Now, you may have the information on your computer strongly encrypted and strongly backed up, but if your backups are not well protected, if some malicious person gets hold of your backups, they might be able to read them. If you don't do anything to protect them, if you just copy the files to your thumb drive and somebody gets the thumb drive, they can read that and know what you're doing. Also, in a big system, if they can get access to your backups, say your backups are off-site, and they change them, then they can do something to your system to force you to have to restore from your backups. They've put their data back in your system to let you know again. Encryption, of course, is the answer. We know all about encryption. You should encrypt the data so only you can read it. In cloud backups, there's a lot of companies that sell backup systems, and they back up on a regular basis. Okay, here's Ken's top 10 recommendations for keeping your computer safe. This is for regular users. Of course, have an antivirus, have some anti-malware software out there, and update it frequently. Make sure the automatic updates are on and update that. Use network address translation. Network address translation to the outside world. It looks like you have one network address, even though you might have multiple computers hiding behind that. Now, in my house, I've got some phones, I've got a couple computers, laptop or tablets, but to the outside world, there's only one address. Only one address. Anything goes out comes from the same address. Coming back in, it can go back in if there's a connection established to that. But if there's not a connection established to that system, you cannot come in. Firewalls, of course, you talked about firewalls. They will not let systems come in that are not approved by the firewall. Auto run. Microsoft and Apple have a nice feature that if you insert some media into the drive, it will automatically play the music if there's music on it, or if there's a software, it automatically. This makes it easy to install software. You have a thumb drive with the software, you plug it in, and you put the CD in your machine, and it automatically starts and installs the software. Yes, but if you have some media, say CD that has malware on it, you put it in the machine, it'll automatically start and run that malware, which is not what you want. And of course, use strong passwords. We already know that you can guess simple passwords very easily. Make them long and make them random. You have to be able to remember passwords. So I think Bruce Schneider we had a quote by him saying it's kind of impossible to have something that's both random and easy to remember. Typically, you can use phrases. Some people who are good at typing will think of a phrase. It's long, in 20, 30 characters, and they type the phrase. Very hard for a system to crack that. Or if you want for something, think of a phrase and then type the first letter of each word in the phrase. So if it's the phrase, a rat in the house might eat the ice cream, AR, it's arithmetic. So type that up. And of course, two-factor authentication is very useful. A lot of companies now require two-factor authentication. Security updates. Keep your system up to date with security. We mentioned if there's a vulnerability, a zero-day vulnerability that the systems don't know about. If you're behind and a new attack comes out, you might not be protected against it. Well, there's a lot of systems a lot of programs that will start when you turn on your computer. In the Windows world, if you go out, you look at the system manager, I can't remember the name right now, but the program that tells you about the performance of your computer, what's doing. It'll also tell you what software starts. And anyway, you can look and see what software starts. If it's not something you think ought to start, if it's not, then you disable it. There's ability to disable it. Just disable it. A lot of companies sell you software, and they think that the only reason you ever turn on your computer is to run their software. That they have it always running in the background. Why would you not want to run their software? You don't need to do that. Not all of it. Some of it's relatively benign. Some of it uses up computer time that you don't need to waste. And some of it's just darn malicious. So just disable it or delete it. Task Manager is the name of the program. If you look at the Task Manager, there's a button there that shows what starts up. You can disable things. Again, when you load a phone app, ask you what if you're allowed, is allowed to use these permissions. Don't allow it to use permissions. I got an astronomy app, so you can point at the stars, kind of cool. You point at the stars. It puts labels and everything. You can see exactly what you're looking at, all the constellations. It won't access my contacts. Why does an astronomy app need my contacts? That got deleted pretty quickly. So yes, if you ask for things that's not core to the purpose, don't do it. Go for something else. Pay for something. Often it's the free ones that. Similarly, browser plugins. Your Chrome or Edge, there are plugins provided by the companies. You can go out there and look at what plugins are there. If they're not plugins that you recognize or plugins that you want, get rid of them. And of course, most importantly, watch for phishing. Phishing is the #1 start of attacks. Check for inappropriate return addresses. If this is coming from the university, but it's a Gmail account, the university doesn't use a Gmail account, neither does your bank. So don't. And look for programmer. Look for generic things. Is it signed system administrator? No, it'll be signed by a person's name, addressed to you. Also, the bank knows your account number. They don't need to ask you what your account number is. They know it. Yes, we have a question here.
Phishing attack earlier today.
Oh, they're all the time.
Like US Post. You have a.
Oh, yes. Somebody's pointing out, I get them from FedEx, from UPS, from the post office. They aren't from any of those companies, but they're malware, they're attacks saying, there's a package, I couldn't deliver it. Please click here to verify your address or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
And they'll ask for credit card numbers and all sorts of other information, which of course they don't want, or they shouldn't need. Don't watch out for those. Unless you're really expecting a package, don't ever answer those things. And of course, remember, user error is way up there. It's very easy to do it yourself. So you have to protect yourself against making your own mistakes. Any questions about backing up your data? It's very important. If you have a company that gets a ransomware attack, but you've got good backups and it's capable of restoring all your systems easily, and if you have it well organized, you should be able to reload every desktop computer in the corporation overnight. So just thumb your nose to the ransomware people and reload. Okay, that's it. Though, I didn't have the schedule. Oh, well, the schedule is very easy. There's a class on Wednesday. That's it. That's the last one. I'll be talking about reverse engineering and a reviewing for the exam. And the old man will do a last lecture to tell you several things that have little or nothing to do with computers, but maybe to be useful. Okay, that's it. And the final exam is 1 week from today. Of course, if you're exempt, you have an A, you're done. You got an A. If you're exempt and you have something other than an A, but you're willing to accept the grade you have, you don't think your final exam will make any difference, keep the grade that was listed in the email. If you can't find the email, contact me and I'll send it to you again. And of course, if you are exempt, then you still have the option to take it. If you are not exempt, you must take the final exam, or you get an F in the final. F in the final will really screw you over. So do take the final exam if you're not exempt. It's like almost every other class. All right, that's it. Of course, contact me if you think there's been an error in your grading. That's it for now. Any questions? Au revoir.
I'll send the phishing email again.
Okay, yes, to Williams.
I sent you an email on